Hello and welcome to the presentation. This is one of a series of presentations on Microsoft licensing. Additional presentations in this series can be found at www.learnlicensing.com. Today we'll be talking about how the Microsoft SharePoint technologies are licensed. First we'll take a look at the products that make up the SharePoint technologies, and then we'll go into the individual licensing models for each one. We'll finish by looking at the purchasing strategies from SharePoint solutions and the benefits of software assurance. SharePoint solutions are all about sharing information, whether that is people sharing information either individually, in a team function, or contributing to an organization intranet. Information at the enterprise level may have a business process associated with it, for example, the automatic routing of a vacation form, or there may be a requirement to share information outside of the organization in a controlled way through an extranet, or an organization may want an internet-based website sharing information with unknown users throughout the world. All of this can be delivered with SharePoint technologies. Look at the products that make up the SharePoint technologies. Customers typically choose from 4 key products to build their SharePoint solutions: Windows SharePoint Services, Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, Form Server, and Search Server. Let's look at the licensing of the first product, Windows SharePoint Services. Windows SharePoint Services, or WSS, is a service of Windows Server. And so, by licensing Windows Server correctly, WSS is also correctly licensed. Let's take a typical network with 3 servers running Windows Server and WSS, and both users and devices connecting to the services of the server. The licensing requirements for Windows SharePoint Services are the same as Windows Server. Standard and Enterprise editions use a Server CAL licensing model. The Server CAL licensing model needs a license for each server running the server software, and client access licenses, or CALs. If your network is set up that you have a larger number of devices than users, so each user is typically using more than one device to connect to the network, you would purchase CALs for your users. This is known as licensing CALs in the per user mode. If, on the other hand, you have a larger number of users than devices, it may be more cost-effective to purchase CALs for the devices rather than the users, allowing all users to use the licensed devices to connect to the server. This is known as licensing your CALs in a per-device mode. If you have external users who are not employees or on-site contractors, you can choose to license these users with user CALs. There are a couple of important points to note with CALs. First, the CAL is simply a license. It is not a piece of technology. It is a license that legally allows users or devices to access the services of the server. Second, the version of the CAL must match the version of the software. If you are using the 2008 version of the server software, the CALs must be the 2008 version also. And finally, CALs entitle the users or devices to connect to any server of that type on the network. For example, if you have 3 Windows 2008 servers and you license your users with Windows 2008 CALs, they are licensed to access any of the 3 Windows 2008 servers. To summarize, this model requires a license for the server and then a choice of licensing users or devices with the per user or per device CALs. Because many organizations are already correctly licensed for Windows Server, you may find that you are already also correctly licensed for Windows SharePoint Services. If virtualization is important to your organization, you may have deployed the Data Center or Itanium editions of Windows Server to take advantage of their extended licensing rights for virtualized environments. The licensing models for Data Center and Itanium editions follow a per processor and CAL model. For further information on these editions of Windows Server, please see the Windows Server licensing presentations at www.learnlicensing.com. Let's look at the Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, also known as MOS. In the Server CAL model we just talked about, the CAL allowed the user or device to access the full set of services of the server. MOS offers different levels of functionality that can be exposed to the user or devices. The core set of functionality offered by Microsoft Office SharePoint Server is linked to the standard CAL. This is the typical functionality that most organizations will want. Microsoft Office SharePoint Server then offers an extended functionality set. If an organization wants to utilize the extended functionality, then the purchase of an enterprise CAL is required. An enterprise CAL is often known as an additive CAL, as it is always added to the base purchase of the standard CAL. You would never be correctly licensed just purchasing enterprise CALs for your users or devices. Standard and enterprise CALs may also be licensed per user or per device, and note that external users can be licensed with standard and enterprise CALs. Note that Microsoft Office SharePoint Server requires SQL and Windows Server as its infrastructure, so you also need to be correctly licensed for these products. Next, we will look at the licensing of Microsoft Search Server. Microsoft Search Server has a simple licensing model. The requirement is a license for each server, and there is no requirement for CALs at all. Now on to Form Server. Form Server uses the same server CAL model as for Windows Server. Licensing Form Server requires Form Server licenses for the servers and then licensing users or devices with Form Server CALs in either per user or per device mode. Now we will review licensing external users for Windows SharePoint Services, Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, and the Form Server. The external connector license is another type of model for licensing external users for Windows Server and Windows SharePoint Services functionality. Previously, we discussed that you could purchase individual CALs to license your external users, but with an external connector, you license the Windows Server in the usual way for internal users, and then purchase an additional license for the server called an external connector license. This one external connector license allows all external users and devices to access the services of the server. So you have two choices to license external users, by CAL or with an external connector. And very often the choice depends on the number of external users that you will want to license. An external connector license is also likely to be the best choice financially for a large or unknown number of external users. Now let's move on to licensing external users for Microsoft Office SharePoint Server and Form Server. We discussed how external users can be licensed in a variety of ways depending on what products are being deployed, either with individual user CALs or with an external connector license. There is a third licensing option for both internal and external users using Internet Sites Edition for either MOS or Form Server. By purchasing the Internet Sites license for the external facing server, there is no requirement for CALs for either internal or external users. Note that if only internal users were using the server, this would not be a legal use of the license. So we now have discussed what the SharePoint technologies do and what these products are and how they are licensed. Now we will look at how you decide which products to deploy to meet your information sharing needs. The functionality of SharePoint technologies can be split into 7 key areas. Team collaboration, for instance, workplaces and blogs. Workflow, an example could be authorization around content. Document and web content management, which could include records management. Security and management, for instance, the site and role management infrastructure. Search, searching for people or content across the organization. Data management, for instance, dashboards. And electronic forms, including the whole process of creation, management, and publishing forms. Let's look at what technologies deliver which functionality. Windows SharePoint Services delivers on team collaboration as well as providing the basis for basic document management, workflow, and security and management features, and includes search capability for team sites. When we talked earlier about sharing information individually or within a team, that's usually delivered by Windows SharePoint Services technology. Let's move on to Microsoft Office SharePoint Server and the technology accessed with the standard CAL. The MOS Standard CAL gives the user access to enterprise content management functionality, records management, and content and people search functionality. It builds on the functionality exposed by the Windows SharePoint Services, and the two products are generally used in solutions together. The Enterprise CAL gives access to all the other functionality that I outlined earlier. Generally, Windows SharePoint Services gives the basic layer of functionality that most businesses will need. The MOS Standard CAL builds on that with slightly more specialized technology. And then the Enterprise CAL provides the layer on top with specialist technologies such as dashboard facilities, electronic forms, or business data search. You may wonder what solutions Search Server or Form Server provide if the functionality is included with WSS and MOS. Search Server or Form Server give organizations a choice if they don't want a full SharePoint solution. Search Server is a product that offers a part of the search functionality delivered by MOS. If your organization just wants enterprise content search, then Search Server delivers that solution. Note there are two editions of Search Server, Search Server and Search Server Express. Search Server Express is a free download product offering similar functionality to Search Server. Choose between these editions based on high availability and load balancing requirements. It should not be a surprise that Forms Server delivers electronic forms functionality for SharePoint technologies. If you want a specialist solution just involving forms without the rest of the functionality included in MOS, purchasing just Forms Server would be your solution. To recap, for Search Server and Forms Server, you would never need to purchase both MOS and Search Server or Forms Server. Use MOS and Standard or Enterprise CALs for complete functionality, or choose specific functionality with Search or Forms Server. Now let's review purchasing options. Choosing the best licensing can help you get the most from your technology solution. How you buy significantly impacts what rights and benefits you receive, which can enhance the value of your solution. Let's review the highlights of your licensing options. Unlike many products, the MOS, Forms Server, and Search Server products are only available through a volume licensing program. If you have an existing agreement, you can simply add your server and CAL purchases to that, or you can start a new agreement with as little as 1 server and 4 CALs. As well as providing cost savings, licenses purchased through a volume licensing program include imaging and downgrade rights, among other benefits. Open License is the simplest volume licensing program. Upfront payment is required and software assurance is optional. Open Value provides additional flexibility and benefits and allows annual payments or an upfront payment option, provides a 3-year agreement period, and includes software assurance. Open Value Subscription provides the lowest upfront cost of all open license programs and has a 3-year renewable agreement. Open Value Subscription requires standardization of a platform product, which can include the Core CAL. One of the Core CAL suites can be a cost-effective, flexible option to purchasing standalone CALs. The MOS Standard CAL is available as part of the Core CAL suite, and both the MOS Standard and Enterprise CALs are included in the Enterprise CAL suite. CALs purchased in this way always include software assurance. The open programs are available from any Microsoft reseller. Let's take a look at the benefits of purchasing software assurance on your server and CAL purchases. Software assurance is only available through volume licensing. Software assurance is a comprehensive maintenance offering that helps you get the most out of your software investment. In addition to the flexibility you get from volume licensing use rights, software assurance can add a lot of value throughout your use lifecycle to help you deploy, manage, and migrate software. Software assurance for servers includes 24/7 problem resolution support, a TechNet Plus direct subscription, unlimited web support, e-learning courses and labs, cold backup rights for disaster recovery, and new version rights. There are qualifying rules for software assurance benefits. For more information on software assurance, ask your reseller or view the software assurance broadcast in this series. You can choose software assurance at the time of your purchase and begin using your benefits immediately for use during your license agreement. You can find additional licensing presentations covering licensing principles and in-depth product licensing models at www.learnlicensing.com, as well as an accompanying downloadable quick reference card outlining the major principles of this presentation and a resource list to get more information related to this topic. Thanks for joining this presentation on the licensing of Microsoft SharePoint technologies.